Good morning and welcome to Reading Wikis for You, where we read the wiki articles for you. And today we're going to start I'd like to call it a Halloween series covering some more spooky topics. But, as always, drop a comment down below so that we know what you'd like to talk about next. But for today, we're going to start with cryptozoology. Cryptozoology is a pseudoscience and subculture that searches for and studies unknown, legendary, or extinct animals whose present existence is disputed or unsubstantiated, particularly those popular in folklore, such as Bigfoot, the Loch Ness Monster, Yeti, the chupacabra, the Jersey Devil, or the Mokele-mbembe. Cryptozoologists refer to these entities as cryptids, a term coined by the subculture. Because it does not follow the scientific method, cryptozoology is considered a pseudoscience by the mainstream science. It is a branch of neither zoology nor folklore studies. It was originally founded in the 1950s by zoologists Bernard Heuvelmans and Ivan T. Sanderson. Scholars have noted that the subculture rejected mainstream approaches from an early date, and that adherents often express hostility to mainstream science. Scholars studying cryptozoologists and their influence, including cryptozoology's association with young Earth creationism, noted parallels in cryptozoology and other pseudosciences such as ghost hunting and ufology, and highlighted uncritical media propagation of cryptozoologist claims. Terminology, history, and approach. As a field, cryptozoology originates from the works of Bernard Heuvelmans, a Belgian zoologist, and Ivan T. Sanderson, a Scottish zoologist. Notably, Heuvelmans published On the Track of Unknown Animals in 1955, a landmark work among cryptozoologists that was followed by numerous other similar works. In addition, Sanderson published a series of books that contributed to the developing hallmarks of cryptozoology, including Abominable Snowmen, Legend Come to Life. Heuvelmans himself traced cryptozoology to the work of Anthony Cornelis Oudemans, who theorized that a large unidentified species of seal was responsible for sea serpent reports. Cryptozoology is the study of hidden animals. The term dates from 1959 or before. Heuvelmans attributes the coinage of the term cryptozoology to Sanderson. Following cryptozoology, the term cryptid was coined in 1983 by cryptozoologist J.E. Wall in the summer issue of the International Society of Cryptozoology newsletter. According to Wall, quote, "It has been suggested that new terms be coined to replace sensational and often misleading terms like monster. My suggestion is cryptid, meaning a living thing having the quality of being hidden or unknown, describing these creatures which are or may be subjects of cryptozoological investigation," unquote. The Oxford English Dictionary defines the noun cryptid as, quote, "an animal whose existence or survival to the present day is disputed or unsubstantiated, any animal of interest to a cryptozoologist," unquote. While used by most cryptozoologists, the term cryptid is not used by academic zoologists. In a textbook aimed at undergraduates, academics Caleb W. Lack and Jacques Rousseau note that the subculture's focus on what it deems to be cryptids is a pseudoscientific extension of older beliefs in monsters and other similar entities from the folkloric record, yet with a, quote, "new, more scientific sounding name, cryptids," unquote. While biologists regularly identify new species, cryptozoologists often focus on creatures from the folkloric record. Most famously, these include the Loch Ness Monster, Champ, Bigfoot, the chupacabra, as well as other, quote, "imposing beasts that could be labeled as monsters," unquote. In their search for these entities, cryptozoologists may employ devices such as motion-sensitive cameras, night vision equipment, and audio recording equipment. While there have been attempts to codify cryptozoological approaches, unlike biologists, zoologists, botanists, and other academic disciplines, however, quote, "there are no accepted uniform or successful methods for pursuing cryptids," unquote. Some scholars have identified precursors to modern cryptozoology in certain medieval approaches to the folkloric record, and the psychology behind the cryptozoology approach has been the subject of academic study. Few cryptozoologists have a formal science education, and fewer still have a science background directly relevant to cryptozoology. Adherents often misrepresent the academic backgrounds of cryptozoologists. According to writer Daniel Loxton and paleontologist Donald Prothero, quote, cryptozoologists have often promoted Professor Roy Mackal, PhD, as one of their leading figures and one of the few with a legitimate doctorate in biology. What is rarely mentioned, however, is that he had no training that would qualify him to undertake competent research on exotic animals. This raises the specter of credential mongering, by which an individual or organization feints a person's graduate degree as proof of expertise, even though his or her training is not specifically relevant to the field under consideration, unquote. Besides Heuvelmans, Sanderson, and Mackal, other notable cryptozoologists with academic backgrounds include Grover Krantz, Carl Schuker, and Richard Greenwell. In a 2025 interview with science writer Sharon Hill, cryptids have become cutified. The reason why cryptids are seeing a resurgence are because of the internet. For example, the Flatwoods Monster is seen in over 33 video games. But the real reason, according to Hill, is because for a while cryptids were thought to be real animals that some people had assigned magical powers to. And with some investigation, the hope was that the magic could be stripped away and they would discover a real, perhaps unknown animal. Quote, one of the reasons why I think that fell apart completely was because the International Society of Cryptozoology fell apart completely. So there were no longer any gatekeepers as of the early 1990s to say a cryptid is these animals that we are studying because we think it's got a zoological basis. Those people were gone. They were quite old, they died, and there was nobody there to take over that gatekeeping aspect, although some people tried. Then you saw an explosion of amateurs in the 2000s. They became researchers that connected via the internet. Now they start making media they can publish themselves. It started to hit a younger and younger generation who love these creatures. Now everything can be a cryptid, unquote. Historically, notable cryptozoologists have often identified instances featuring irrefutable evidence, such as Sanderson and Krantz, only for the evidence to be revealed as the product of a hoax. This may occur during a closer examination by experts or upon confession of the hoaxer. Expeditions. Cryptozoologists have often led unsuccessful expeditions to find evidence of cryptids. Bigfoot researcher Renee Danadin led searches into caves to find existence of Sasquatch, as early Sasquatch legends claimed they lived in rocky areas. Despite the failure of these searches, he spent years trying to find proof of Bigfoot. Lensgrave Adam Christopher Knuth led an expedition into Lake Tele in the Congo to find the Mokele-mbembe in 2018. While the expedition was a failure, they discovered a new species of green algae. Young Earth creationism. A subset of cryptozoology promotes the pseudoscience of young Earth creationism, rejecting conventional science in favor of a literal biblical interpretation and promoting concepts such as living dinosaurs. Science writer Sharon Hill observes that the young Earth creationist segment of cryptozoology is well-funded and able to conduct expeditions with a goal of finding a living dinosaur that they think would invalidate evolution. Anthropologist Jeb J. Card says that, quote, creationists have embraced cryptozoology, and some cryptozoological expeditions are funded by and conducted by creationists hoping to disprove evolution. In a 2013 interview, paleontologist Donald Prothero notes an uptick in creationists as cryptozoologists. He observes that people who actively search for Loch Ness Monsters or Mokele-mbembe do it entirely as creationist ministers. They think that if they found a dinosaur in the Congo, it would overturn all of evolution. It wouldn't. It would just be a late occurring dinosaur. But that's their mistaken notion of evolution, unquote. Citing a 2013 exhibit at Petersburg, Kentucky-based Creation Museum, which claimed that dragons were once biological creatures who walked the earth alongside humanity, and is broadly dedicated to young Earth creationism, religious studies academic Justin Mullis notes that, quote, cryptozoology has a long and curious history with young Earth creationism, with this new exhibit being just one of the most recent examples, unquote. Academic Paul Thomas analyzes the influence and connections between cryptozoology in his 2020 study of the Creation Museum and the creationist theme park Ark Encounter. Though Thomas comments that, quote, while the Creation Museum and the Ark Encounter are flirting with pseudoarchaeology, coquettishly whispering pseudoarchaeological rhetoric, they are each fully in bed with cryptozoology, unquote, and observes that, quote, young Earth creationists and cryptozoologists make natural bedfellows. As with pseudoarchaeology, both young Earth creationists and cryptozoologists bristle at the rejection of mainstream secular science and lament a seeming conspiracy to prevent serious consideration of their claims, unquote. Lack of critical media coverage. Media outlets have often uncritically disseminated information from cryptozoologist sources, including newspapers that repeat false claims made by cryptozoologists or television shows that feature cryptozoologists as monster hunters, such as the popular and purportedly nonfiction American television show Monster Quest, which aired from 2007 to 2010. Media coverage of purported cryptids often fails to provide more likely explanations, further propagating claims made by cryptozoologists. Reception in pseudoscience. There is a broad consensus among academics that cryptozoology is a pseudoscience. The subculture is regularly criticized for reliance on anecdotal information, and because in the course of investigating animals that most scientists believe are unlikely to have existed, cryptozoologists do not follow the scientific method. No academic course of study nor university degree program grants the status of cryptozoologist, and the subculture is primarily the domain of individuals without training in the natural sciences. Anthropologist Jeb J. Card summarizes cryptozoology in a survey of pseudoscience and pseudoarchaeology. Quote, cryptozoology purports to be the study of previously unidentified animal species. At first glance, this would seem to differ from zoology. New species are discovered by field and museum zoologists every year. Cryptozoologists cite these discoveries as justification of their search, but often minimize or omit the fact that the discoverers do not identify as cryptozoologists and are academically trained zoologists working in an ecological paradigm rather than organizing expeditions to seek out supposed examples of unusual and large creatures, unquote. Card notes that, quote, cryptozoologists often show their disdain and even hatred for professional scientists, including those who enthusiastically participated in cryptozoology, unquote, which he traces back to Heuvelmann's early, quote, rage against critics of cryptozoology, unquote. He finds parallels with cryptozoology and other pseudosciences, such as ghost hunting and ufology, and compares the approach of cryptozoologists to colonial big game hunters, and to aspects of European imperialism. According to Card, most cryptids are framed as the subject of indigenous legends typically collected in the heyday of comparative folklore. Though such legends may be heavily modified or worse, cryptozoology's complicated mix of sympathy, interest, and appropriation of indigenous culture or non-indigenous construction of it is also found in New Age circles and dubious Indian burial grounds and other legends invoked in hauntings such as the Amityville hoax. In a 2011 foreword for the American Biology Teacher, then National Association of Biology Teachers President Dan Ward uses cryptozoology as an example of, quote, technological pseudoscience, unquote, that may confuse students about the scientific method. Ward says that, quote, cryptozoology is not a valid science or even a science at all. It is monster hunting, unquote. Historian of science Brian Regal includes an entry for cryptozoology in his Pseudoscience, a Critical Encyclopedia. Regal says that, quote, as an intellectual endeavor, cryptozoology has been studied as much as cryptozoologists have sought hidden animals, unquote. In a 1992 issue of In a 1992 issue of Folklore, folklorist Veronique Campion-Vincent says, quote, unexplained appearances of mystery animals are reported all over the world today. Beliefs in the existence of fabulous and supernatural animals are ubiquitous and timeless. In the continents discovered by Europe, indigenous beliefs and tales have strongly influenced the perceptions of the conquered confronted by a new natural environment. In parallel with the growing importance of the scientific approach, these traditional mythical tales have been endowed with sometimes highly artificial precision and have given birth to contemporary legends solidly entrenched in their territories. The belief self-perpetuates today through multiple observations enhanced by the media and encouraged, largely with the aim of gain for touristic promotion, by the local population, often genuinely convinced of the reality of this profitable phenomenon. Unquote. Campion-Vincent says that, quote, four currents can be distinguished in the study of mysterious animal appearances, unquote. Forteans, compilers of anomalies such as via publications like the Fortean Times, occultists, which she describes as related to Forteans, folklorists, and cryptozoologists. Regarding cryptozoologists, Campion-Vincent says that, quote, this movement seems to deserve the appellation of parascience, like parapsychology. The same corpus is reviewed. Many scientists participate, but for those who have an official status of university professor or researcher, the participation is a private hobby, unquote. In her Encyclopedia of American Folklore, academic Linda Watt says that, quote, folklore concerning unreal animals or beings, sometimes called monsters, is a popular field of inquiry, unquote, and describes cryptozoology as an example of, quote, American narrative traditions that feature many monsters, unquote. In his analysis of cryptozoology, folklorist Peter Dendel says that cryptozoology devotees consciously position themselves in defiance of mainstream science, and that, quote, the psychological significance of cryptozoology in the modern world serves to channel guilt over the decimation of species and destruction of the natural habitat, to recapture a sense of mysticism and danger in a world now perceived as fully charted and overexplored, and to articulate resentment of and defiance against a scientific community perceived as monopolizing the pool of culturally acceptable beliefs, unquote. In a paper published in 2013, Dendel refers to cryptozoologists as, quote, contemporary monster hunters that, quote, keep alive a sense of wonder in a world that has been very thoroughly charted, mapped, and tracked, and that is largely available for close scrutiny on Google Earth and satellite imaging, quote, unquote, and that on the, quote, on the whole, the devotion of substantial resources for this pursuit betrays a lack of awareness of the basis for scholarly consensus, largely ignoring, for instance, evidence of evolutionary biology and the fossil record. According to historian Mike Dash, few scientists doubt there are thousands of unknown animals, particularly invertebrates, awaiting discovery. However, cryptozoologists are largely uninterested in researching and cataloging newly discovered species of ants or beetles, instead focusing their efforts towards, quote, more elusive creatures that have often defied decades of work aimed at confirming their existence. Paleontologist George Gaylord Simpson lists cryptozoology among examples of human gullibility, along with creationism. Quote, humans are the most inventive, deceptive, and gullible of all animals. Only those characteristics can explain the brief belief of some humans in creationism, in the arrival of UFOs with extraterrestrial beings, or in some aspects of cryptozoology. In several respects, the discussion and practice of cryptozoology sometimes, although not invariably, has demonstrated both deception and gullibility. An example seems to merit the old Latin saying, I believe because it is incredible, although Tertullian, its author, applied it in a way more applicable to the present-day creationists. Quote, unquote. Paleontologist Donald Prothero cites cryptozoology as an example of pseudoscience and categorizes it, along with Holocaust denial and UFO abduction claims, as aspects of American culture that are, quote, clearly baloney, unquote. In Scientific Americans, the culture of amateur paranormal researchers, Hill surveys the field and discusses aspects of the subculture, noting internal attempts at creating more scientific approaches and the involvement of young Earth creationists and the prevalence of hoaxes. She concludes that many cryptozoologists are passionate and sincere in their belief that mystery animals exist. As such, they give deference to every report of a sighting, often without critical questioning, as with the ghost seekers. Cryptozoologists are convinced that they will be the ones to solve the mystery and make history. With the lure of mystery and money undermining diligent and ethical research, the field of cryptozoology has serious credibility problems, unquote. Organizations. There have been several organizations of varying types dedicated or related to cryptozoology. These include the International Fortean Organization, a network of professional Fortean researchers and writers based in the United States. International Society of Cryptozoology, an American organization that existed from 1982 to 1998. Cosmopoisk, a Russian organization whose interests include cryptozoology and ufology. And the Center for Fortean Zoology, an English organization centered around hunting for unknown animals. Museums and exhibitions. The Zoological and Cryptozoological Collection and Archive of Bernard Heuvelmans is held at the Musée Cantonal de Zoologie in Lausanne and consists of around 1,000 books, 25,000 files, 25,000 photographs, correspondence, and artifacts. In 2006, the Bates College Museum of Art held the, quote, Cryptozoology Out of Time and Place Scale, unquote, exhibition, which compared cryptozoological creatures with recently extinct animals like the thylacine and extant taxa like the coelacanth, once thought long extinct. The following year, the American Museum of Natural History put on a mixed exhibition of imaginary and extinct animals, including the elephant bird Aepironymus maximus and the great ape Gigantopithecus blacki, under the name Mythic Creatures, Dragons, Unicorns, and Mermaids. In 2003, cryptozoologist Lauren Coleman opened the International Cryptozoology Museum in Portland, Maine. The museum houses more than 3,000 cryptozoology-related artifacts. See also ethnozoology, fearsome critters, fabulous beasts that were said to inhabit the timberlands of North America, folk belief, list of cryptozoologists, a list of notable cryptozoologists, and scientific skepticism. All right, there is our start to spooky topics. So I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, give it a thumbs up and make sure you're subscribed to the channel. And as always, drop us a comment down below so that we can know what you'd like to hear next. Thanks for watching.